Hi everyone, this is Stephen Medve from CMSC Media, and I'm here today with Scott Snowden.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, you're from Flywheel Strategic.
That I am.
And well, you're a great person to talk to because we're going to talk about customer experiences, but really what we're going to talk about is more than a high level portion of customer experiences, but actually boots on the ground.
Great. Yep.
So I just want to talk a little bit about you.
Wow.
Couple things I know. You're a father of two.
I am. Proud father.
Awesome. I heard that you are into ketogenic.
Yes.
Into the diet.
Yes, that's one of the things I've been following for quite some time.
Now, are you active right now?
Yeah, I am. I've been doing it for a year and a half.
Wow. So do you have the little insulin ketogenic reader? Are you doing the blood work? Testing when you hit ketosis?
Yeah, I follow it pretty religiously. You can ask the rest of my family and all my friends.
So you've been keeping the weight down?
That's not been the main objective. That's just been a pleasant side effect. Yeah.
So, do you do the intermittent fasting as well?
I do sometimes.
You do sometimes.
Yeah.
That's interesting. One of the interesting facts I kind of asked about you was that you're a board member for the Toronto Renewable Energy Co-op.
Yeah, you've done some research.
So how did you get into that? Because I'm assuming it's been a couple of years since you've been doing it. And what does that mean for you in terms of your responsibilities?
Sure. TREC, the Toronto Renewable Energy Co-op, is an organization that I've been involved with for over 10 years now. It started because somebody once knocked on my door and asked me if I wanted to put solar panels on my house. And this was about 2 weeks after I had bought my house in East Toronto. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And so he put my name on a list and then I forgot about it. And then about 3-4 months later, I got an email saying, well, we've got some information about how everybody in the neighborhood can buy solar panels. So come on down to the community center and we'll tell you all about it. So I went down, thinking I'd just kind of sit around a table with a bunch of other people. And there was probably 300 people in the room. It was standing room only in this community center down on Queen Street. And I was just blown away. I also discovered that day how expensive solar panels were at the time and that there was no way as a new homeowner this was going to be a practicality for me, but I was just overwhelmed by the movement. So I went up to the guy afterwards and I said, you don't have a website. I need to contribute to this. That I'm going to help you. And that led into me getting very involved in renewable energy in Toronto, in Ontario. And now that has evolved into helping other not-for-profit and charity organizations issue, manage community bonds so they can raise capital for their social enterprise as well.
Interesting.
So we've helped organizations raise millions of dollars through community bond structures.
That's awesome. And from a digital format.
And all because I walked into a room wanting somebody to have a website.
Awesome. So you are a founding partner of Flywheel Strategic.
Yep.
You've been in business for 15 years now, so that's a huge benchmark.
I think we're through the startup days.
Yeah, those are all gone. And a couple things I'll just mention how I know you is we've been going to Progress, the Next and Sitefinity for a long time.
Yeah.
I think, and when I've gone to the events, I've always asked the same question, digital experience and customer experience is probably high level on everybody's.
It's a buzzword.
It's a buzzword
talking about it. Yeah.
But really, what was happening in the market even a few years ago, and still, is that people are trying to actually deploy a customer experience from personalization, some automation, having a funnel going down.
If they're getting that sophisticated, yeah.
If they're getting, and that's the question. So people are buying the tools, but nobody has the right story from integration.
Right.
And full knowledge, whenever I would ask people when I was at Progress, I would say, who's using their digital experience cloud, who's doing this? And you were mentioned multiple times. So I'm like, okay, I got to know, Scott, your partner, Mark. I have to know these guys.
That's right.
Over the years, I've really understood that.
We've had some good conversations. Yeah.
Exactly. And one of those is when there's two different types. There's your analyst who goes in there and they talk
Right.
about, let's talk about persona development. Let's talk about the customer journey and customer experience. And then they do a business plan and they put the business plan in there and they tell you what it is. It's a lot of paper. But then that's where you come in, and and you do the business strategy. I'm not saying you don't, but there's a practicality of it where a lot of companies say they throw the gold sticker statue out there and say do everything, and then you have to come in there and go no.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Let's talk about the practical, and that's what I really like. So, one question I have, since the inception of 15 years ago when you started the company, there's obviously been different value propositions along the way. So what's really stayed at the core? And now that everything's driving to kind of that, the buzzword of digital experience, but what's been the value proposition that's changed, and what's been value propositions that stayed?
So we didn't even understand what a value proposition was really when we started the company. And then we worked with some of our colleagues in the early days who told us to make sure we were figuring that out. And we were surprised when we surveyed our clients that what they really valued was that we were rapid, responsive, and reliable. And we just sort of thought that that made sense. Like, everybody does that. What do you mean that that's a value proposition? But we quickly determined that, if you adopt those things, practice them, preach them, your customers will appreciate them. And that's what we think, or we have found, really helped us establish ourselves with a good reputation as the place to go. Not a lot of that has changed over the 15 years. Perhaps we've moved from rapid to nimble. We're a little bit more thoughtful. We still like to work fast, but we want to make sure that it's a very measured, curious engagement that we're providing. And now that we're more established, we've diversified our services. So we used to kind of be thought of as a design build shop. What do you need? Here it is, deliver it, go on to the next one. Whereas now, getting back to experience, it's just as important, almost more important, to make sure that whatever you deliver has longevity. So from the get-go, we start talking to you about your business and your objectives and things like that. Then we move into the design and the build. But then we like to say that where the project really starts is when you get to capitalize on your investment and measure its performance, hold our feet to the fire, iterate and refine. And we do that because we have now not just developers on staff, but UI, UX, strategy, content, as well as our development team. So these days, it's about being a full service digital shop.
So that's exactly, what I'm expecting from a delivery partner who's not just a digital agency on a front end analyst side,
right?
Actually deploys with developers and UX designers on staff.
Yep.
Which is something that I think more agencies have to really focus in on, is having those people internally and not just trying to hire those out.
Yeah, not looking at those as a commodity, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So now I want to start questioning you, because the idea is to really discuss customer experience.
Great.
But we're going to take it from some of the analysts in the group. I'm going to describe and give their description of what customer experience is. And out of this, I want you to agree or not agree with the statement and just explain which one you most agree with.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with Gartner.
Yep.
As they have an interesting description. So Gartner defines customer experience as the customer's perceptions and related feelings caused by the one-off and cumulative effect of interactions with a supplier's employees, systems, channel, or products.
Yep. Okay.
So I'm going to go on to Forrester.
Yep.
So if you could remember that one.
Okay.
They have basically a quote, and they go, how customers perceive their interactions with your company.
Mm-hmm.
And they add, good customer experiences are three things from the perspective of the customer. They are useful, so they deliver value. they're usable, make it easy to find and engage with the value, and enjoyable, emotionally engaging, so that people want to actually use them.
Yep.
That's an interesting one. And then I went off and I kind of went with a little bit different of an interaction. So I went with PwC. So they have kind of the best worlds. And what truly makes for a good experience, this is what they say, is speed, convenience, and consistency.
Yep.
Friendliness and human touch. That is creating a real connection by making technology feel more human and giving employees what they need to create better customer experiences. So
so here's what I heard in those three. It's interesting that the second two, Forrester and PwC, started with descriptions that are very transactional. It's about these finite, identifiable touch points. It's about the transaction. They all included the human touch, the emotional element of customer experience, but I think that the Gartner one put that first. Like, it really emphasized that that's at its core. And so I think I like the Gartner description the best. All three of them, there's elements of each one that are accurate and none of them's even wrong. But what I really like about the way that Gartner articulated it was that it puts more emotion as the underpinning of that customer experience. And so what's, I think, useful for a digital marketer is to remember that you've got to start from that place. So it's so easy with the other ones to look at those and follow that definition and fall back into thinking about the transaction and the actual workflow that's happening, as opposed to the motivation and the consumer experience. Gartner also described it as a one-off as well as a cumulative experience. And I think that that's key. That wasn't mentioned in the other ones. It can be one-off, but it is also more likely cumulative. So you never have a second chance to make a first impression. That's absolutely right. But how many times have we seen a marketing campaign focus on one experience, build one experience, focus on one objective, and forget about the evergreen or the long tail strategy as well? So you've got to make sure that you're thinking of your audience both now and after this moment that you've engineered for them.
So I agree completely. It's a spider web.
It is.
Right? So it's growing out. So you have the core message that you created and everything's intricate towards everything else. Now, this is the follow-up question to this is, these are all very interesting statements, and these are statements that I feel are very high level.
Yeah.
Where do these statements start falling short once you get past the talking point? So once you get past the talking point of human, having that more feeling and human effort towards the campaign or the experience, and how is that working within a digital ecosystem? Because just a quick point out from me is that I find that people take on way too much too soon.
Yeah. So, interesting point. The none of them are, again, at fault, but they all lead you to the start line, but then the gun never goes off, right? So they tell you what this is all supposed to be, but they don't lead you down the path. You've got to figure that out for yourself. So I don't think that any of them necessarily fall short. They just don't have an opportunity to lay out strategy for you. So, that's where we would come in or something like that. I think what you want to take away from this, or how you want to really get started, does depend on your audience definitions. So really understanding what that emotive experience is that you want to deliver. This is where we start talking about persona development, really understanding those audience segments, wanting to capture what it is that you want to do with that audience segments, or where you want them to go. Using a persona is a very well-established marketing tool, and in traditional sense, it kind of stayed on your whiteboard or on your pin board, your bulletin board, and that's kind of the extent of how far a persona went. These days, we would advocate for not throwing those away, but perhaps not necessarily being so thorough with them. So you described sort of this process of putting a lot of things on paper. That's still important, but we would advocate for being thorough, but not being terribly exhaustive, because you're not going to get a chance to really understand those audience segments and those personas until you start collecting data against them.
So, and that you and I have that in clear. I actually remember that from a conversation with you prior. And that's something that I always find that people miss.
Yeah.
And you said two things that I love. One, everything, we just said that spider web, everything should be, it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Right? As long as you're collecting data to understand where the success and the failures lie.
Right.
So when I say doing smaller sprints, and when people talk about persona development, I'm sure you and I can agree, we get that, here's 10.
Yes.
It's like, you can't manage 10 because
most marketing teams can't.
No.
Yeah.
But I go,
or is there really much variation between half of them? So, yeah.
And then the question I have for you is then, you mentioned data. That is the most important piece of this in my mind when you start collecting that data, but it is the right data.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel you might come in as opposed to an analyst to describe, because everybody has a KPI.
Right.
But where do you come in with the idea of the data being the most important piece?
Well, a lot of people understand what Google Analytics is,
Yes.
and they dive into their data, and that's their data. And they try and infer what the audience segments are doing by adding some sort of filters on top of that. But tools like that fall short because they don't effectively allow you to filter, without a lot of work, filter your traffic and look at it based on that persona, that classic marketer's strategic planning approach. We use a tool called the Digital Experience Cloud from Sitefinity. It's built that way from the ground up. You can define your personas right in the system in the classic way. Your demographic information, your profile description, your stereotypical photo, but you can take it another step further. You can define rules that track your visitors and assign them to one of these personas based on their behavior. If you just stop there, boy, you're miles ahead of everybody else, because now you have a better understanding of exactly how each audience segment is using your website. And if you can see that one slice of the pie is overwhelming the traffic from the others, that's very actionable information.
So, it's interesting because there's a lot of tools out there, Digital Experience Cloud, Marketo,
Yep.
the Marketing Cloud with Salesforce, Pardot, ExactTarget, all of those. The tools are very similar. I think I still find it's an 80-20 rule. So you get these tools and people try to use these tools, but they don't have they don't have the knowledge to say what data is important, what data isn't. They just haven't gone down that path. And because out of the box, there's all that functionality, but if they don't know how to pull it all together.
Yeah. So there's two things you're getting at here. One is this expectation that out of the box, I should just be able to turn it on and it's going to take away my work. That all of a sudden it's going to tell me what my marketing strategy should be. It's going to tell me what my audience segment should be. And that's just not the case for any tool, right? You've got to know what you want to get out of it before you go in and start looking at the data and start mining that information. So you can't abandon, you still got to put in the hard work. Right? A lot of people kind of wish that wasn't the case, but the best marketers out there are going to appreciate and understand that, and they're going to dive in. And the second thing is they don't do anything with the data and the insights that are in there. They get these tools, they collect information, they find little nuggets, and then they kind of get busy with the next priority, and they forget to take action on and give the information to their content team, refine the information that's there. There's a lot of insight that are in these things, and you've got to remember to iterate and refine. So you said fast sprints. That's a bit of a technical, that's based on sort of more of a technical background. The marketer would talk about iterate and refine.
Correct.
Right? And so you want to make sure that you're using these tools to feed back into your strategy, that a strategy and a content plan should never be a fixed component. You've got to always be reevaluating, and therefore not necessarily planning too far out. You want to plan very, very well. You want to plan the immediate future, roughly plan the distant future, and continue to iterate and refine.
Yeah, it's a process, not an event.
Yep.
I love it. All right. So without giving away any secret sauce, organizations that are trying to get their feet wet are even in the middle of their approach, because most, when we say the middle, are exactly what you just said. They're doing one-off campaigns and then, oh, this didn't work. And then they just switch gears or they've got, well, we got this campaign, then we go to this campaign and they jump. But my question for you is, can you give us some steps that organizations can start with to start identifying tasks, start identifying the planning side of how to ensure they're ready to engage? Even, using a digital experience cloud platform like Sitefinity or any other type of marketing. So what they can do to start.
So I'll come back to personas as the place to start. What a lot of digital marketers, when we talk about personas, they nod their heads and they know what they are, and they think that they're kind of like, a textbook a tactic. But if you don't have those in place, we almost insist that you don't move forward without it. You've got to have a good common vernacular for your team and your business to be able to talk about what your strategy is trying to accomplish and who you're trying to reach. So if you don't have some sort of persona definitions built, you've got to start there. You got to know very clearly who you're after and what that segment looks like roughly. That allows you to do personalization. All of a sudden, your content strategy can now get more sophisticated. Instead of having the blog post that you're going to pump out and your white papers that you're going to pump out, you can layer a validation on top of your personas. Who is each piece of content for? Am I missing anybody? Have I overdone it in one area? So that can be very powerful. Without any tools in place, a digital marketer can still take advantage of all that. Once you've done that, then you can use tools like personalization that are built into your content management system, Sitefinity, the Digital Experience Cloud, any others, to target your audience uniquely and have a much more meaningful conversation with each one. Obviously, the next step after that is to make sure that you're deliberately trying to move towards an objective. Mm-hmm. Amazing how many times a marketing campaign is just out there trying to build brand awareness or trying to drive brand equity or something like that. Nothing wrong with those, but hey, shouldn't we be doing some lead capture, some email capture, booking webinars, having sales calls, having coffee, whatever it means to your business, having more transactions? You need to make sure that you identify those conversions. I should stop for a moment and emphasize that it's really easy to get carried away with all of this thought. You can build an endless list of personas. You can have an incredibly long list of conversions. You made the point earlier, it's got to be manageable. And we were talking about iterate and refine. One thing at a time, start with 2 personas, start with 3 personas, build out as you need to. Start with 1 conversion, start with 2 conversions, get more sophisticated once you've got the wheels moving. Knowing then what content and other marketing touch points are going to lead to those conversions is obvious. And that's how you layer it on top of your personas. That's going to start the flywheel turning. This is about feeding back energy into the system. So then if that is gaining momentum for larger companies, hopefully, you've got a pile of leads. You've got a pile of contacts. If you're not then helping yourself cut through the noise and prioritize those leads that are coming in, then it's garbage in, garbage out. You've got a pile of stuff that you don't know what to do with. Your sales team is told to call everybody. They're getting annoyed because it's not turning into anything. So you've got to bubble up to the top, the most likely leads, the most valuable contacts, the most important customers that are coming through the funnels that you're building. So if you don't have some kind of lead scoring, then that would be the last level to put in. So personas, conversions, and understanding your touch points, and then good lead scoring. If you've got all that together, then you can look at your data on an individual contact by contact basis, and you can have a much more meaningful conversation, knowing exactly what that person has been interested in the whole way along their relationship with you, whether or not they actually talked to you or just visited your website.
I love that, because I look at the I think the same way you do in terms of marketing touch points. I have inbound content that, we talk about the transaction, and the transaction could just be filling out a form. It could be, actually seeing that person is interested because they click a heavier button, or they actually engage in something. But then it's also the outbound content. What do you do after the person has engaged? Do you just stop with your messaging?
Right.
And this is where I really find that most companies have the hardest time. And exactly what you said, it is just constantly reevaluating the data to say, how can I make this more successful? So stop, exactly what you're saying. Stop with just doing one-off campaigns.
Right.
Take the campaign and just expand on it.
Yeah, one-off campaigns are good. It's usually the ignition to get the engine started, but then you got to make sure that you've got momentum behind that, and it builds energy as you go.
That was a great answer, Scott. I really appreciate it. I think our audience is going to really appreciate the, candid lecture, because it is a candid lecture, because you and I both, whenever we see this, I'm always seeing this constantly in marketing, and I'm going, we need to help.
Right.
We need to get past that analyst sticker idea.
Right.
Not to say that Gartner, I don't want to put them in the camp that they don't do this, but I know they charge a bigger fee than what they put online. All right. So this is kind of a fun section.
All right.
We're going to do what's called, fact or fiction.
All right.
This is where I'm going to ask you whether this piece of information is fact or fiction.
Okay.
So I am going to try and trick you a little bit,
and
so
I try not to be a politician. And
don't feel obligated to be, fooled or anything. Yeah, okay. Exactly. All right, first one. A GDPR Privacy Act will become law in the USA on January 2020. Okay. Fact or fiction?
A GDPR law will become...
we'll say a Privacy Act.
Okay. True.
Correct. So in January 2020 in California, there will be a GDPR Privacy Act, which makes you and I go nuts.
Yes.
Because we don't know what that means for any of our customers.
Well, we have some idea, but it's hard to explain. Yeah. It
is hard to explain, and it is a collaboration of different people in the room.
That's right.
And we know what that is. That's awesome. Good job. Number one. All right. Second one. Technology vendors are now strategically aligning themselves to sell tools and services for the marijuana, hemp, and hemp product industry. True or false? Or fact or fiction?
100% true.
That's right. So we've actually seen a few. You've seen Shopify, BigCommerce, a couple CMSs really going down that vertical market. So I guess the question is, are you starting to see that as an opportunity? Because I look at it from the side of alcohol.
Yeah.
So there's really no difference. Is that something that you would be?
We have been having those conversations, yes.
That's awesome. I love seeing this. And in fact, everybody that I've been talking to is going down that same route. So
we're not sure where it'll lead, but the door's open.
Awesome. Next one. Wearables will begin to decrease in popularity in the next few years. Fact or fiction?
Not true.
Not true. Perfect.
I think they're just going up.
Yeah. So by 2023, they actually predict that 40 to 50% of people will actually be wearing a wearable, and that wearable will have automation tied to it for health, for all their details. So it's the IoT space in general, I think, is just taking off, which is why we always go down this headless path now. And it's kind of...
Well, my insurance company I just went through another application, and they asked me if I wore a Fitbit or something like that, and I was able to say yes, and I'm not exactly sure how much of a boost it gave me to my premium, but they said it was an advantage.
I love that's amazing. I actually think like devices such as dash cam for insurance.
Yeah.
You want to lower your rate, put a dash cam in there.
Yeah.
It's
nobody's gonna lie against the video.
It's awesome. All right, last one.
Okay. I'm doing all right here.
You're bang on. Progress Software
Yes.
is moving into the digital experience platform space, fact or fiction.
Absolutely. Full
Interesting.
steam ahead.
Full steam ahead. I know they're working hard to get all of us, all
Yep.
of the analysts and people that to kind of go down that digital experience platform,
Yep.
which I already believe they were.
Yes.
I mean,
I think it's just a natural evolution. We used to call it content management, and now we're able to call it experience management, which may be a subtle change in terminology, but boy, does it reframe the conversation, just like the one that we're having today. It just makes you think differently about not just producing content, but about producing an outcome. So I think it's a natural trajectory for a lot of companies, including Progress.
I agree. So that's everything. I really
Steve.
appreciate
Looking
having
forward to the
this
next chat.
You betcha.